As a vegan, there's one thing I think about all day. It's what gets me up in the morning and what provides me purpose. As a vegan, my main goal is to work out how to remove people's liberties and freedoms. In fact, my veganism is actually an extension of my aspiration for a tyrannical dictatorship. I'm not vegan for the animals, I'm vegan for the tyranny. After all, as an outspoken vegan, does that not mean that I'm attempting to curtail people's individual freedoms? Well, interestingly, in a sense, yes. In the same way that laws prohibiting kicking dogs reduce the freedom of someone who wants to kick dogs. And isn't that kind of the point? That certain freedoms, as we may refer to them, are curtailed in pursuit of ensuring that overall freedom and liberty is increased. After all, prohibiting murder limits the freedom of someone who wishes to murder, but then, as a result, increases freedom of people in general by the virtue of outlawing murder. And to reference dogs again, we do have laws that prohibit people from hurting animals, so we already believe that the freedom to harm animals should be weighed against what such an action means for the animal. So is it tyrannical to stop people kicking dogs, or is it more tyrannical to kick dogs? And if people's freedom to kick a dog should be curtailed, why not also people's freedom to force pigs into gas chambers? After all, I would much rather be kicked than forced into a gas chamber. Yet with animals, legally and culturally speaking, we think kicking is worse than throat slitting and gas chambers. As vegans, we recognize that people should have the liberty to choose what to eat, what to wear, and how to entertain themselves. But we don't believe that these entitlements overrule someone else's right to live a life free from harm and exploitation, in the same way that those who think people should be able to entertain themselves don't think that dogs should be made to fight in the pursuit of that entertainment. Hey everyone, I'm just jumping in quickly to tell you all about today's sponsor, Incogni. Did you know that data brokers compile our personal information and then sell it to businesses? As well as being clearly unethical, this also means that our personal data is vulnerable to data breaches and cybercrime. Now, the good news is that we actually have the right to protect our privacy and request that data brokers delete the information that they hold about us. The bad news is that it takes years to do it manually, and we'd also need to repeat the process every few months as data brokers continue collecting our data and creating new records. This is where Incogni comes in, because they work on our behalf by enforcing our legal right to have data brokers delete the information that they have about us, protecting our privacy from businesses and also data breaches as well. Now, scarily, when data breaches happen, those behind them can gain access to things like our name, personal address, email, employment history, phone numbers, details about our relatives. This obviously puts us at risk of things like being scammed or defrauded. However, all you have to do is sign up to Incogni, grant them the right to contact data brokers on your behalf, and then they do all the work to protect your identity and privacy. Even better still, the first 100 people to click the link in my description and use the code EarthEd will get 60% off Incogni. So if protecting your personal information online sounds like a good idea to you, then make sure to sign up to Incogni now. And thank you so much to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. All right, guys, now let's get back to the video at hand. And the thing is, when people talk about vegans wanting to limit people's freedoms, they often misrepresent their intentions. My goal isn't actually to make it a law that someone has to be vegan. I just want people to extend the values they already have about certain species of animals to other species of animals who also deserve the same consideration. I want consistency, not tyranny. And I think the best way to bring this in is education, not forceful coercion.
Had you had powers, would you seek to restrict people eating meat? Were you to have powers?
No.
You would
no,
not?
I
Okay.
don't want to mandate things. I want to educate people to understand that there's a better, more ethical, more sustainable and healthier way ultimately
Then you
that
must
we can
accept
farm
people
and use
have
our
other
land.
views.
All right, on that,
Of
Earthling
course
Ed.
they do, but we can have open conversations.
We can, and I've enjoyed
And we've had a very open conversation. Thank you very much.
The idea that my aim, or the aim of veganism in general, is to have laws imposed on society is naive at best and scaremongering at worst. Laws tend to be reflective of societal attitudes. Politicians and political parties want to appeal to the electorate, so laws that are wildly unpopular do not serve to aid politicians in their desire to be re-elected and maintain authority. So if our laws were ever to reach a point of consistency on the subject of animal cruelty, well, it would be in a society where the attitudes of the public reflected those laws. So the question of mandates and laws is really secondary to the question of advocacy, as it is through advocacy that public attitudes can change. In other words, as I said to Nick, Education and swaying public opinion are the real means for creating societal progression. Case in point, while we might have laws stopping people from kicking dogs, to reference the point from earlier, the reason the majority of people don't kick dogs is not because they're scared of the legal repercussions, but because they believe it rightfully to be a morally repugnant thing to do. These laws exist to punish those outliers who want to act in this horrible way, not to mandate and force a population of people who actually want to kick dogs into submission. Realistically, the same will be true if laws are ever brought in making farming animals illegal, for example. And vegans can't force anyone to be vegan. We're not going around beating people into submission with sweet potatoes or waterboarding them with oat milk. Although, if anyone does create any hoax photos of vegans torturing someone, well, there is someone who has a track record for publishing fake photos. Vegans can be loud. They can be judgmental. They might protest in ways that are disruptive and inconvenient, but they can't force you to be vegan. And you might see a vegan protest that you don't agree with or that you don't personally find persuasive. You might meet a vegan and just not like them. But just because you might see a vegan protest or talk to a vegan you don't like doesn't mean the principles of veganism are invalidated as a consequence. I have met many forceful, aggressive, judgmental, and to be frank, just not very likable non-vegans. Is that a good argument in and of itself for being vegan? No. Of course not. However, and check this out, even in democratic situations where plant-based food is chosen over animal-based foods, well, even in those situations, there's accusations of tyranny. For example, in the UK, university student unions are voting in plant-based initiatives through the Plant-Based Universities scheme, and some councils are also making the food at their events plant-based as well. In Oxford, the council voted to serve only plant-based food at council events, and for schools to have more plant-based options, which sounds great, right? Well, unless you're Jeremy Clarkson, because Jeremy Clarkson called these council members Stalinists. Because if there's one thing Stalin believed in, it was democracy. These measures are not being forced in, they're being voted in. If a student union votes in favour of more plant-based options, that's called democracy. People that call this a form of dictatorship seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding of what a dictatorship is.
This is an authoritarian bully boy approach. The British public don't like diktats. They believe in education and choice. This approach is completely unacceptable.
If Oxford Council or a university didn't vote in favour of more or only plant-based options, well, they wouldn't bring in more vegan options. These people are literally decrying dictatorship while protesting the outcome of a democratic process that doesn't affect their life whatsoever. And yet, vegans are the snowflakes. And what is actually more tyrannical? When we eat animal products, we are paying for the controlling of someone else's life, from the way they are conceived, to if they are allowed to stay with their mothers after birth, to the circumstances of their social interactions, to their living conditions, what and when they eat and drink, and even, of course, to the time and method of their death. Farmed animals have literally zero bodily autonomy or control over their own lives. They get to live only a fraction of their natural lifespan before being brutally killed, and all in the name of a 15-minute meal. Is this not dictatorial or tyrannical? It's beyond incomprehensible that asking someone not to inflict violence upon someone else is what is regarded as authoritarian tyranny in this situation. When we buy animal products, we are forcing animals to live a life in which they are exploited, harmed, mutilated, and slaughtered. A non-vegan can stop engaging with a vegan. A non-vegan can ignore a video of a vegan protest they don't like. Animals can't simply walk away from the situation they are in, and they can't ignore it either. When we talk about being forceful, nothing is more forceful than controlling every aspect of someone's life. Nothing is more forceful than subjugating someone to your will. Nothing is more forceful than taking someone's life from them. So when we compare veganism to non-veganism, while vegans might be passionate, maybe even judgmental at times, what is actually more forceful, more tyrannical? Here's a clue. Being asked to change your diet is not the same as having your throat slashed open in a slaughterhouse. So actually, veganism is about freedom, liberty, and autonomy. It is, however, about viewing these concepts beyond the end of our own noses. Alright guys, well that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to learn how to respond to not only this argument, but all the political and social arguments against veganism, and indeed all the arguments against veganism in general, then I would highly recommend pre-ordering my new book, How to Argue with a Meat Eater and Win Every Time, because in that book, I not only debunk this argument, but indeed every argument against veganism. So if you want to be armed with the knowledge and the information required to debunk this argument or any argument next time it is leveled against you, well then I highly recommend checking out the book. And for those of you who do pre-order it, I really hope that you like it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. As always, let me know down below in the comments what you thought about what it is that I had to say in today's video, and I will see you all in the next video.